Hello and welcome to this information session on private autism and ADHD diagnostic assessments. This is absolutely everything that you need to know regarding all things autism, ADHD, and combined diagnostic assessments. With me, Jude Morrow, the CEO and founder of Neurodiversity Training International. And here's why we have put this information session on for you this evening, totally free, wide open to the public. Okay, is because most people, when it comes to autism and ADHD diagnostic assessments, they get their information from Facebook groups, from online, from endlessly Googling, endlessly scrolling, listening to TikTok, and various other sources. And what I'm here to do is to give you the facts. Okay? These are facts. That's what I'm here to do. To give you the facts so you can make an informed decision and see if this is right for you. So let's look at the situation as it stands. Probably the reason you're watching this, probably the reason why you signed up for this is because across the UK and Ireland, it doesn't matter what local authority area you're in, what trust area you're in, or whichever part of the Republic of Ireland you're in, waiting lists for diagnostics of autism, ADHD, or combined is now sitting at around 5 years. Okay, that's what we're talking about because any families that we are supporting, we always ask them at the point of entry, how long have you been waiting? And we've existed a long time now. We're around a long time. And whenever we started doing this, the waiting list was 2 years or 2.5 years. It's now up to 5 years and there for children, and there is absolutely no sign of that slowing down or stopping at any point. That's where we are. Call that alarming, call that fear-mongering. It is truth-telling. And the only exceptions to the 5 year rule at the moment seemingly are if a child is in care, someone is subject to criminal justice proceedings, family court proceedings, or has been detained under the mental health order. That's it. If you're an adult, 18 plus, the likelihood of you being diagnosed or going through a diagnostic assessment of autism or ADHD or combined is pretty much nil. Because most priority is being given to children. Now, adults are being added to a waiting list, but we have had several over the last week come through us, through our service, that have been waiting nearly 10 years. So it's a long time. So there's a lot of myths, misconceptions, and downright falsehoods about private diagnostics. Please do not worry. We are here to help you. So these are the reasons why people are languishing on waiting lists. Okay? And we are going to go through these all in as forensic a detail as we can for the time that's allowed to reassure you. There is a big belief that private diagnostics are not accepted by schools, the NHS, and the HSE. Not true. Affordability, people think it costs many, many thousands of pounds. It doesn't. It is generally affordable to most families. Most families. It is not as expensive as you think. It is not as complicated a process as you may think, as robust as it is. And then there's pure stigma. There is not a queue around the corner waiting for diagnostics and coaching. This is why we put this information session on, to encourage people to listen to the facts, to listen to what's out there and make an informed decision. Okay? There seems to be a lot of trendy rhetoric out there that people are just lining up out the door to buy diagnostics these days. It's simply not the truth. And if it was the truth, then a couple of things. The first thing being, we would not feel the need to offer complimentary, totally free information sessions, answer thousands of emails every day, Facebook messages, etc., etc., etc. So we will get through all of these. So let me get to the introduction. How rude of me not to introduce myself at the very start. So first of all, I'd like to give you a nice, huge, warm welcome to Neurodiversity Training International. My name's Jude Morrow. I am an autistic ADHD and PDA adult and dad to an autistic ADHD and PDA child. That's Ethan. He's 11. And yes, you can imagine our house is very, very fun. It absolutely is. So my professional background, I was a social worker in mental health. And I've worked in various different areas as a social worker. I've worked in primary care, worked in the hospitals, community mental health, institutional mental health, and a broad range of abilities, whether it's mainstream or learning disability, and age groups from young children right the way up to one of the oldest people ever to have lived. So I have a wide professional range, and all of us here at Neurodiversity Training International, we're not just autistic and ADHD people claiming to be experts because we have a diagnosis, but we all have many years in clinical and professional practice over decades. So we've helped thousands of parents, teachers, professionals to foster happy and independent neurodivergent children and young people and adults as well. Uh, we do not only we don't only offer access to diagnostic assessments, we also offer individual work as well with adults and with families. So basically to get young people out of their rooms and enjoying life, school, being in the company of other humans and having hope for the future. Pretty much the same for adults as well, and for workplace accommodations and other things. So our approach always comes from both personal and professional practice. We say what works and we say the facts, not what sounds lovely on social media. And outside of all this neurodiversity stuff, I'm an unapologetic cat lover to my two rescue cats, Mrs. Arnold and Jerry. And if you're lucky, Mrs. Arnold might make an appearance. She's my black cat. She's a very old girl. I actually did like a class on PDA a few weeks ago, and Mrs. Arnold sat up here and just stared down the barrel of the camera. So I was just sitting here talking about PDA, and my black cat was staring down the barrel of the camera. I think she stayed for about 40 minutes. So Jerry may come too. Plus, I love skydiving as well. It's my thing. I was that kid that didn't have a sense of danger. So now I have grown up with that and I go skydiving. I was actually away yesterday in the very cold weather. Love bungee jumping, flat whites. I'm a gamer. I love art, pro wrestling, and being the encouraging and loving face and voice of tough love parenting advice. So that's what we do. Somebody actually asked a few weeks ago at a class, it's like, are you like an autistic super nanny? And I was like, well, I suppose so, yeah. So if anybody's an executive with Channel 4, connected with Channel 4, and they want to reboot Super Nanny with a male host, absolutely hit me up. That would be absolutely wonderful. So that's just a little bit about me personally. I've actually written a couple of books about my experiences of growing up as an autistic child in the mainstream school system and getting into business and what I'm doing and everything else now. I've given a couple of TED Talks. I've been in Forbes magazine, been around the block. So yes, plug, available in all major online bookstores. Written a couple of crime novels too. So, oh dear, the camera has gone off there. I'm just going to have to readjust that. I'm going to have to readjust to put the other one on, probably be a little bit easier, but it doesn't matter from what I'm going through anyway. And as far as Neurodiversity Training International, not only do we offer learning seminars, we do like seminars, learning stuff like this, but pretty much on a weekly basis. But again, doing that an awfully long time. We offer training and development days. We do training in schools or with corporate, and access to diagnostic assessments through trusted clinical providers. We are supported by Intertrade Ireland. We won their Seed Corn Award last year. We've done lots of partnership work with the NHS and the HSE over the years, and we've even partnered up with Fortune 500 companies and stuff like that too. Some of them are here, the likes of Google and IBM and so on and so forth. So for adults and children, we have a good mark in the field of supporting families and adults. So let me make a prediction, and I've been making this prediction to huge criticism the last decade, okay? So, and I'm going to make it now because I have not been proven wrong yet, okay? I hope I am eventually, but I don't think I will be. So, the governments across the UK and Ireland are not going to invest more in this area, despite promises. So we hear it all the time at election time. We hear of we are going to invest more resources in SEND, we're going to get these waiting lists down, we're going to get more provision, more resources, more everything else, and it pretty much never happens. So when I started doing this, whenever I got into the trenches of advocacy and set up NTI and everything else, people were irate that the waiting lists were 2 years. Now we're up to 5, and there is no sign under new programs of government that that is going to change. All right. So waiting lists are getting longer and longer, and kids are being left behind. More adults and parents are struggling to manage daily life well. So from a personal point of view, I had to go private for my son, Ethan. I was the same as you from a parental point of view. I was desperate. Ethan was on a waiting list. He was suffering. He was referred for the waiting list whenever he was 5, whenever he was in primary one, first year of primary school, because it was very clear that he was autistic and ADHD. Yes, he is a quirky little apple that fell from a big quirky tree, which was me, and he really struggled. Um, a year passed, nothing. 2 years passed, nothing. And ultimately, his school placement did break down whenever he was 8, after waiting a few years. And this is when I went private. I said, I'm not waiting any longer. And I thought the same as you, because don't forget, I was a social worker for a long time, and I was thinking in my head, I can't go private, sure, they're not accepted. Or schools don't accept private, or GPs don't accept private. But I did some homework and spoke to some people and found out that 99% of what I thought in my head was the truth regarding private diagnostic assessments was wrong. Um, Again, yeah, I had to make sacrifices. And the way I thought of it was, if the clutch of the fridge freezer went, I wouldn't think twice about paying it. So I did, and the relief and the efficiency was incredible. And this is why we decided in 2021 to make this open to everyone. Okay. Then I got a private ADHD diagnostic as an adult, and both were accepted and medication were given. This is when we started to partner up with diagnostic clinics who could keep uh, their services affordable to most families, and it's fully compliant and everything else. So here's the idea that I want to quash immediately. The idea that private diagnostics are not accepted. Folks, this is not true. Okay, and this is what everybody says whenever they come through us. I'm sure it's going to be in the Q&A. Yeah, I can just see it. It's in there already. Is my GP in school said that they only accept CAMS. Yes, I am not doubting that that was said to you, but the fact of the matter is that is not correct. Okay, that is not correct. So, and I will go into this again in much larger detail, but a school or a GP cannot only accept a diagnostic assessment from CAMS, because this is what the situation is. And this is both in the Republic of Ireland and it's in every corner of the United Kingdom. They can't do that because many people get cataracts done privately, get hip replacements done privately, get physiotherapy privately. I've had a couple of skydiving accidents, one of which was actually yesterday, and I think I may or may not have broken my thumb on this finger. But I know that I will need to get that looked at, and I will get that looked at privately. I will get that, or physio for my hand, arm, and shoulder. And you cannot go back to your GP and they'll refuse to treat you. But it seems to be that the social media whispering column has really taken off here. It's just not true. Then we do speak to a lot of parents that say, well, we went private and the diagnosis wasn't accepted. And the reason why it wasn't accepted is because whenever we asked to see them, is it was substandard and it wasn't compliant. Okay, so private diagnostics are accepted, as we will go into in just a moment. They are, okay, because think about it. Why would our service exist? Why would there be other clinics that perhaps they don't work with us, we don't work with them, and so on and so forth for various different reasons? There are so many of them, right? Because what does the law actually say? Okay, let's look at what the law says. So this is law and policy, okay? So according to the SEND Disability Code of Practice, local authorities cannot legally reject a private autism or ADHD assessment if a trained multidisciplinary professional team performed it. It follows the NHS HSE gold standard of reporting and follows the NICE guidelines and the DSM marking criteria. Okay? A private autism assessment or ADHD or a combined can be used as supporting evidence when requesting an education, health, and care needs assessment or workplace accommodations and adjustments. It is black and white. It is easily found online where they cannot discriminate against you for going private. They can't, because it's advantageous for a lot of reasons. So for those who can afford to go private, now most can, because the way most clinics are priced, which we will go into in just a minute, is that it is openly affordable. All of ours offer payment plans and so on and so forth. But if you go through a diagnostic assessment, now feel free to Google it. We have never, ever, ever been sued or anything else for misinforming people or anything else, because this is the truth. This is the truth. And you can Google so many cases and look up so many cases where people challenged a private diagnostic assessment refusal and it's been overturned. One of which I actually spoke to today when they found out that I was doing this, and I actually wanted her to come on and say a few words. And the reason why she couldn't was because she has a meeting with an estate agent for a villa they're buying in Mallorca from the local authority settlement they received for refusing their child's diagnostic assessment. So, yeah, shame she couldn't come and speak, but that is the fact of the matter. That is the fact of the matter. They cannot discriminate against you if it's fully compliant. Okay? They can't say, we're refusing this because CAMHS didn't do it. They can't do that. Okay? Now, we make sure for all our partner clinics, all of ours, that they follow these things. If you're in the market and you're Googling, right, who should I go to? You will see a lot of well-marketed websites. You will see a lot of trendy, sexy branding on a lot of diagnostic clinic websites, but they are not multidisciplinary. They do not follow the NHS or HSE gold standard of reporting. They do not follow the NICE guidelines and the DSM marking criteria. Okay? People say autism assessments and stuff like that. The way it has to be worded is a full compliant diagnostic assessment. If you do not see those words, run a mile. And see when you think you've run far enough, run a little bit further. But you will see when you look at all of our site and materials and everything else, all of these things are present in all of our partners. All of them. And even ones that we're not, still use the same. Okay? So you are protected. If you're in the UK or Republic of Ireland, you're totally protected by law and policy because this is all regional. SEND is all regional, right? It's not that it's not devolved for our Scottish, Welsh, Northern Ireland friend. This is totally regional. This totally applies. It's the same as the Equality Act of 2010, which, by the way, it is discrimination if someone decides to go private for part of their care. It's why right to choose and things like that exist. Okay? So law and policy protects you. Okay? And this is what a complete rebuttal to private diagnostics are not accepted. The fact of the matter is they are. They have always been. They always will be. Okay? Because even with ourselves, we've done a lot of contract work with the NHS. We've done a lot of contract work with the HSE. And you will see that no matter what local authority you're in, and it doesn't matter for what area, whether it's autism, diagnostics, ADHD, OCD, schizophrenia, bipolar, brain imaging, whatever it may be. Whatever it may be. So you are totally protected. So if you have considered going private for a diagnostic assessment, which I'm assuming that you have because you're here, if you quote this, there is no comeback to it. Because unfortunately, a lot of educators, particularly, will be of the belief that only CAMHS diagnostic reports they can accept. It's simply not true. If you're an educator, okay, you cannot say to a family, we can only accept a CAMHS or an NHS or a HSE diagnosis. You cannot say that to a family. I'm trying to say this to protect you because you're leaving yourself wide open to legal action, which you will lose. Okay? That it is really, really that simple. Think about it. If you go to town and you purchase a new pair of glasses, okay, ophthalmology or optometry in the NHS or the HSE will not immediately close your file. They can't do that. Okay? It is really that simple. And I'm just seeing in the chat, somebody has just said here, Hamida has said, I wish I had this information before. This could have saved a lot of time and things around. Of course, Hamida, and this is why I'm doing this, because so many people are misinformed. So many people are so misinformed and are of the stern belief that only NHS or CAMHS diagnostics are accepted. It just is not true. Okay? It's just not true. Because you follow the law and SEND policy, which is regional. Okay? They cannot legally reject a private autism or ADHD assessment if all of these checkboxes are checked. And all of ours are. Anybody that we're partnered with for anything, whether it is for diagnostics, whether it's for CBT, counselling, or everything else, everybody's licensed, qualified, and regulated. Okay? And this is why we have the hub that we have, and it's why we have the reputation that we have. Okay? I know a lot of people were very, very frightened by the Panorama documentary, and I can't shy away from this fact, is that yes, there were cowboy clinics. There were. There were. And there were professionals who were duping families. There were. And but we can't hide from that, which has increased the stigma much more and made our work so much harder to the point where we need to sit and take time out of our evening and encourage people to take time out of their evening to try and correct this. Okay. So ultimately, if you're looking for a private diagnostic assessment for anything, whether it's through us, whether it's through anywhere else, these are the things you're looking for, and these are the questions you should be asking. Okay? These are the things that you should be asking, or even CQC registration. So somebody has said a CAMHS receptionist told me they wouldn't accept a private diagnosis. Thank you for clarifying. I will get to that point later, but and I'll explain the reason why. There's an in-depth reason as to why CAMHS will explain this to you. Okay, there is a reason. Okay, so that is the law. That's what you're protected by. So public services stance on private. Okay, so Colin, this will totally address your point. Some will recommend private diagnostics, but the vast majority won't. We're talking 99%. Because I worked in public services and I was not allowed, under any circumstances, to recommend private services. The only recommendations that public services can make are the third sector, the charity sector, or their own waiting list. Because you're talking about things like conflict of interest and things like that. Now, although privately and off the record, everyone knows the situation. I did. Whenever I was working in mental health, I knew that I was saying to people, yes, you will be added to an autism or ADHD diagnostic waiting list, knowing that they would never be seen because it's just a waiting list. But however, a waiting list is redundant if they're not doing anything with it. And some here and there will be seen, but not many. So that's particularly for adults, and for children, that waiting list is very, very long across the board. So their big priority is image, right? It's image because public services are not going to say to you the reality of the situation. It's not their fault. This isn't, please don't accept this as a criticism of public services. It really isn't. They're underfunded. The fact of the matter is, your government, wherever you are refusing to invest money in this. There is a magic money tree, and it's not a very expensive challenge to overcome. Many challenges over the last decade have been very easily resolved at very short notice, but this is very low down on their scale of priorities. That kills me to say because I have dedicated my life, my career, almost my son's life by default, to this mission that we're on to try and make lives easier for autistic and ADHD kids, their parents, caregivers, teachers, and adults, and their employers, and their children and loved ones, and so on. So, yes, they will always say, we will not accept a private diagnostic. But here's the thing, here's what we always recommend, okay? Do not rely on them, right? They do a great job and they're wonderful people for the people that they can help, which is very, very few, right? And it's unfortunate, but it is true. Waiting lists are just so, so long, and it's not their fault. They are trying their best, but they are tiny cogs in a massively underfunded, outdated machine that's not really fit for purpose. Which is why there's so much industrial action and strike action and so on. And I suppose my question always is, when do you ever see the private sector out in strike? Pretty much never. Sad but true. And it took me a long time to come around to that fact. Whenever I was, working for the NHS and even doing private work and stuff like that, the situation just got worse and worse and worse every single year that I was in it, and has deteriorated even further since I've left it. So let's talk about affordability. We always ask parents and anyone, how much do you think it costs? Okay, many will say £5,000 or £6,000. The fact of the matter is it's much lower. None of our partner clinics are over £2,100, and that is for a combined diagnostic assessment of autism and ADHD. No one is more expensive than that. And all of our clinics and most clinics with a good reputation will offer payment and affordability plans at 0%. We certainly do. So Another thing, because we offer it, and you can certainly avail of one, I will put a link at the end of this information session. All reputable services will offer a free complimentary consultation to assess whether it's you as an adult or your child's suitability. Okay, we do that, including us. So if we look at the market for, let's just say autism only for the sake of the conversation, the market for a nice, National Institute for Clinical Excellence and fully approved diagnostics with that process that's protected by law that I just discussed is between 850 to £1,600. The £1,600 would be in-person clinics. So anything lower than that will likely not be fully compliant because we see ads all the time. Get an autism assessment for £300. And it is an autism assessment, but it's not a nice, assured, fully compliant, full autism or ADHD or combined diagnostic assessment. Okay? So it is as simple as that. So somebody has just said, now we have clinics that are even cheaper than that, but a combined diagnostic assessment for adults or children, among our partner clinics, they're between £1,600 and £2,100. That's for a combined. That's the autism and the ADHD diagnostic assessment. That's the going rate. Okay, that's roughly what it is. So here's our promise to you, all right? Now this is the thing. Diagnostics can be turned around with us in around 20 weeks, right? That's from putting a booking deposit down and getting your report in your hand. 20 weeks. It's a hell of a lot better than 5 years. I would hope that you agree. Okay, it's a lot better than that because many who do come to us have waited far too long. Even some say in some smaller, I suppose maybe more affluent local authority areas, if I can call them that, will say that their waiting list is 2.5 years. What child struggling can wait that long, especially in transitionary times like going from nursery to primary school or from primary school to secondary school, going through exam times, whether it's for GCSE or A level, and then even in adulthood, going into third level education, university, and so on. So all our clinics are fully compliant and they're accepted by the NHS and HSE bodies because they're fully compliant. If you encounter acceptance trouble, now sometimes, it's very rare though, they say our school didn't accept this. They're very quickly corrected. Sometimes, whether it's me or another team member having a call with them to say legally they have to be accepted because it's fully compliant. And it's the same process identically as what the NHS and the HSE would use, which they legislate for even on their own website. So we are always happy to help there, where if that happens, we never leave a family behind. We never have. I think maybe out of the thousands that we've helped through the process, I think it's maybe 12 cases where it was challenging, but there were other complexities involved in the case as well, including a legal challenge because there were some divorce proceedings and so on and so forth. And with us, there are no hidden charges or costs. All the fees are on our site, all of them, right? You will not pay any more than that. Because what we do find with some other clinics, which I will not name, that are not partnered with us because we don't approve of their practices, is they will put a low number on their site, but then the costs do mount up. Sadly, we did take a young mum today who, for a previous clinic, had taken out a loan of £5,000 and then had to pay another five, and then was asked to pay another five again. It can be a very scary world out there. And that's why we give these promises and these rock steady guarantees into a recorded call, which will not be edited, which will be sent out to everybody who registered for it. All right. So what you're getting here, it's a fully compliant autism, ADHD, or combined diagnostic assessment, regardless of the outcome. Because what people say is, can you buy a diagnosis? The answer to that is no. There are people who do come through our services and don't get diagnosed, right? But we offer a fully affirming service that's progressive and modern, particularly to women and girls, as public services are very far behind. We really pride ourselves in that because we are on a big mission to ensure particularly women and girls are diagnosed in a timely fashion, because a lot of the time girls aren't referred for it because seemingly there's a misconception that their presentation is different to boys. It's not always. There's just still an ingrained belief in a lot of sectors of medical care that autism or ADHD is simply for women and girls. Um, Sad, but true. There are always recommendations and options for pre, during, and post-diagnostic support as well. Because a lot of people say diagnosis, then what? Or what about these particular issues that we're having? So, a scenario, for example, if you're a parent, is if there are particular education or behavioral issues that you need help and support with, people work with us during the diagnostic process, or even before it starts, or even after, depending on the particular needs and circumstances of any given family. It's the same with adults as well. For example, workplace coaching or workplace counseling, consulting, whatever it may be, can be before, during, or after the diagnostic process at every single stage. So, okay. Now, I'm going to go back because I do want to answer this question. It has come into the chat. Now, I do want to say to everybody, if you have a question, is please put your questions in the Q&A tab at the bottom. So I don't miss it. It's just lucky, Harry, that I've just caught your questions. What are the benefits of a diagnosis? I will tell you exactly, Harry, what the benefit of a diagnosis is. So a lot of people will go along the line of, I don't want to give my child a label. But if a child doesn't have a diagnosis or know their identity, they may, like I did, and like many of us did, is we may affix labels to ourselves or assumptions about ourselves. Am I different because I'm stupid? Am I different because I'm unlovable? Am I different because I'm just a failure and can't manage to do simple, basic things that everyone else can do? Now, I wasn't told I was autistic until I was 19, but I'm 34 now, and there was a lot more stigma back then. But I grew up wondering why I was different to everybody else. Now, I did get a diagnosis at the age of 11 in 2001, and what that helped me with was extra support in the classroom. It got me support and workplace accommodations whenever I started working part-time, whenever I was 16 in 2006. It also helped me with extra time in exams for my GCSEs, my A levels, even my university exams, even in my placements whenever I was going through my social work degree. And also, a diagnosis for a child or an adult will ensure that they receive the proper mental health care, because in adult mental health, or any mental health for that matter, the first line of support is going to be down the line of depression and anxiety. And for 97% of the population, that's going to be correct. Sadly, for the 3%, that's ourselves, that won't always apply. There is absolutely no downside to a diagnostic for a child or an adult, because it means that it gives full protection. Because autism and ADHD, now personally, this is a personal point of view, I do not see myself as a disabled person. However, because I am autistic and ADHD, under the Equality Act of 2010, I have a protected characteristic, which is a disability. So there are absolutely no disadvantages to getting a diagnostic at all, because it means that people know who they are. And even for adults, we have had, through our services, we've had children as young as 3 and someone as old as 93 who finally found out after 93 years why she was different. So there is always going to be advantages. There are absolutely no disadvantages whatsoever. Okay. Now let's talk medication, because I already see there are several questions in there whenever it comes to medication, if it's recommended, right? So in most cases, a lot of cases, the first line of recommendation will be lifestyle changes, whether it's diet, exercise, and sleep. It's like, are you eating healthy, wholesome food? Are you getting out and moving your buns, hun? Are you get exercising? Are you going to the gym? Are you hiking? Are you doing cold water dipping? Are you doing hot yoga? Are you going skydiving at the weekends? Are you going bungee jumping? Are you active? Are you walking the dogs? And so on and so forth. And, are you sitting up late at night, eating snacks and scrolling and going down YouTube rabbit holes and so on and so forth? Because for mental health in general, a lot of challenges can be alleviated through those three basic things: diet, exercise, and sleep. Yes, for some of us, it's going to be a bit more complex than that. But the second kind of line of defense would be talking therapies, CBT, counseling, mentoring, coaching, and so on and so forth. Because a lot of people these days, our patience is going down and down and down and down. It's why there is much higher rates of divorce, higher rates of obesity, higher rates of lots of things, because everybody wants things done quickly. And a lot of people believe with medication that it will be that answer. For a lot of people, it is, and it really helps. If I get 100 autistic or particularly ADHD when it comes to medication, if you get 100 of us in a room and ask every one of us, did medication do good for you? About 50-50. Personally, my personal point of view, didn't do great for me. My son takes medication and it saved his life. So your GP or your primary care provider will always have the final say, and this is the same process if it's done by the NHS and the HSE. So some queries that we get sometimes, plenty actually, medication is recommended. So if we've got an active child or adult who's already gone through counselling or CBT or currently has a coach, or they're one of our coaching clients or anything else, and medication is recommended, sometimes the GP can still say no. And that doesn't mean that your diagnostic has not been accepted. The GP or your primary care provider will always have the final say. Every time, there is absolutely no exception to that whatsoever. So Kat has just asked for a quick question. I'm going to scroll up. I've missed a couple of them. I'll try and get some answered as I go. So to save wait to the end. So somebody said it should be illegal to charge hidden costs or fees for an assessment. By the way, we actually queried this because there was 3 particular clinics that we latched onto, and we said we want to do the right thing and help. But if something's in small print or T's and C's or whatever else, but all of our information, all of our pricing is all online. But yeah, I agree with you. It's that's why I make the conscious decision not to partner with any clinics with any shady practices. So Kat has asked, what diagnosis do you request if you suspect your 7-year-old daughter of having autism, PDA, ADHD, perfectionism, executive dysfunction, and emotional dysfunction? Kat, that would be a combined diagnostic assessment there for autism and ADHD, and PDA profile, executive function, and emotional regulation are all taken into that. So that would be a combined diagnostic assessment is what you would go for there in that. Okay, so can you provide a discounted family service, for example, father autism PDA? Well, technically speaking, you know what? A lot of people ask this, Kat, do you offer a family rate? Because yes, there are a lot of neurospicy families. However, all the clinicians, everybody needs to go through the process one at a time. It's not like a movie theater where everybody's in one room and stuff like that. Everybody needs to go through the diagnostic process individually, because I know where you're getting that from. There were some clinics that were offering family packages, right? No, it can't work that way because everybody needs to be seen one at a time for it to be fully compliant. It's an individual diagnostic assessment. But what we can do is you still talk to us at the end of this. I will leave a link up for people if they want to have a chat with us in further depth about it, and we can talk about everybody's individual circumstances on a one-to-one call if that's what you want. It's totally free. It's no obligation. So this is a common stance that GPs take, and we largely agree with it. Okay? Well, in fact, totally agree with it. Is because a lot of people will say to their GP, if we go private, will you prescribe medication? And GPs will say, well, you need to have a diagnostic first. So not everyone that comes gets a diagnosis. It's as simple as that, right? Because we follow the diagnostic process, right? Meds need to be recommended in the report because it's not a foregone conclusion. Yes, you may, or your child may get a diagnostic of ADHD in particular, for example, or combined, and medication may not be recommended for various different reasons, whether it's other health concerns, age, dietary, various other factors. And then, even, for example, if a diagnosis is provided, then recommended in a report, the GP could still recommend non-pharmaceutical solutions, and then so could we. So for example, whether it is coaching or counseling or CBT or talking therapies, drawing and talking, whatever it may be. Because that's what a lot of people hold on to is medication, right? Go through the diagnostic first, see if it's recommended for you, because a lot of people spend a lot of time and a lot of energy thinking about medication and it's not recommended at the end. But a lot of the time, GPs can still prescribe it, and it's not always a big issue. It's not always a huge issue or a huge problem or a huge challenge. So this is the fact of the matter, right? The fact of the matter is this. The families and individuals that we support get diagnostic assessments in a timely manner, okay? And when this happens, additional laser-targeted support can be offered, right? When that support is in place, parents, kids, and adults feel comfortable and gain steps toward independence and happiness. And those who wait deteriorate and get left behind. It's sad, but it's true, okay? And a lot of people say, well, Jude, that's very defeatist. But think of this. No amount of campaigning or complaining is getting anyone anywhere. You have to take control yourselves, okay? You see a lot of politicians or even a lot of charities and so on saying, we need more funding, and those calls have been ignored for decades now. So here's my advice to you, whether it's through ourselves or anyone else, don't depend on anybody. Just pretend that public services don't exist anymore. That's probably the easiest way to think about it in this area, right? That's probably the best way to think about it, because people are waiting and waiting and waiting and nothing is happening. You can make the choice. This is all in your hands now. This is me empowering you and putting it in your hands. You can make the choice and be fully protected under the law and send policy. The lists are getting longer, more kids and adults are being left behind, and only you can make the choice to refuse to be left behind at this point. Your politicians and the mainstream charities haven't solved this, and I think that's crucial to note. They have not solved this. And the billions in donations and funding and government grants and everything else and these waiting lists are getting longer. It begs a question, what are they doing with the money? That's not for today, but what you can do, and what I had to do with my own son, was I had to take control and say, look, I am not going to wait by the letterbox, wait and hope, phoning my MP, complaining to everybody and saying, get this done quicker. And a lot of people think the creakiest gate gets the most oil. And I know from being someone that a lot of the creaky gates we're talking to, that was worse. Because what they have is a zero tolerance policy and threats on social media, threats to the paper, ousting us, calling us out in the street, and everything else could lead you to get your file closed. So my urge to you is, if you're sticking with public services, please be kind to them, because they're victims in this too. This isn't their fault. This is not their fault. The population has grown and grown and grown over the last 20, 30 years, and the amount of public services and funding on the ground has barely ever increased inside that time. So let me give a recap, all right? If an autism, ADHD, or combined diagnostic assessment is done by a multidisciplinary team adhering to the NICE guidelines, the NHS and the HSE gold standard of reporting, and the same diagnostic marking criteria, then it must be accepted or it can be challenged legally and overturned. Now, because of the reputations of ourselves and our partner clients, it very seldom to never happens. Normally one letter solves this problem anyway. So what we like to call the 100 quid fix, which is very rarely deployed, and 100% of the time when that's deployed, it is accepted. So we ensure for us, because what we want to do is reassure you, is that all our partner clinics are fully adherent and exceed all clinical guidelines to ensure acceptance in a neuroaffirming way to make this as slick, as seamless and easy as possible for you to get the help you need for yourself or your children. So the big question, what is your next step, right? What are your next steps? What do you do now, having heard this, right? So let me help, okay? The first step in your diagnostic and support journey, what I want to offer to you before I get into the questions, is you can book a totally complimentary consultation with us, 15 minutes, totally free. no obligation. You can ask your questions. We can discuss needs, health histories, give you the best options for budgets and your circumstances and your needs and your turnaround times, because we have full wraparound care for families and adults under one roof. Now, what I'm going to put in the chat, I'm just going to put a link in there. That is a booking link to book a totally complimentary 15-minute call with me or one of the team. You can go on there, you can pick a slot, you can talk to us. We are more than happy to help you. We love what we do, and some may need that personalized approach. Or if you have any questions about the content of this, you can certainly ask a question in that, which is maybe private and away from the rest of the group. And what I want to show you just very, very quickly is our website, is our nice snazzy website, where you can look at all the information, all the pricing, everything else. So this is our lovely fancy site, neurodiversity-training.net. So we have won awards. There's our Intertrade Ireland Kite Mark, which we also work with the NHS as well. Award-winning wraparound care for parents of neurodivergent children, families, and neurodivergent adults, diagnostics, training, and one-to-one support to succeed. So if you want to explore diagnostics, click there, coaching and consultancy there, or school and workplace training days. So that is pretty much, that is our site. The link is in there, and even through the site as well, you can book a call. If you're looking at this back, then you can go back and take a look. And you can come on and you can chat to us. So as far as one-to-one stuff, somebody, just a couple of questions come in. What is the one-to-one coaching benefits and the one-to-one? It can work with whether it's parents and young people or adults dealing with big emotions, a return to learning, employment, and having purpose beyond self-isolation. Those that are perhaps avoiding school at the moment or work or anything else. And a personalized plan specifically for you and your child, because generic advice will only get you so far if you're stuck down the rabbit hole looking for advice and guidance. So I am now opening the floor wide open to questions. So in the Q&A tab at the bottom, if you can just start with, my question is, and limit your question as much as you can, and to explore diagnostics and individual work, go to www.neurodiversity-training.net. Give us a little plug, a little follow. Follow me, Jude Morrow, and Neurodiversity Training International on social media, not a demand, wink, wink. And if you're feeling very generous, feel free to leave us a Google review. I hope that has been, in a way, reassuring for you, that this is affordable, this is doable, and it is so easy. It is so, so easy. And with our partner clinics, they're not full. Like, people think that the diagnostic clinics have people queuing around the corner to buy a diagnosis because it's trendy these days, and it's not true. If that was the case, I wouldn't be giving an information session to reassure you that this could be a good move for you. So let me get into the questions. Daniel, what is the average cost for a private autism assessment in London as opposed to getting one through the NHS? Daniel, I mean, with some partner clinics, especially that are remote, whether they're for adults or for children, the price will be the same. I know what you're thinking, the likes of Harley Street and stuff like that, but a lot of those clinics will be very highly priced, and I suppose in a lot of ways rightfully so, because they deal with very complex and very unique cases. We do have clinics that can do that as well, but with all of our services, we have done so many for families from London of all boroughs, and the prices are pretty much all the same. I hope that answers your question, Daniel. Darcy, have you ever helped older people with autism who struggle to find employment that offers training? Yes, we have. So we have worked with people of all ages and all walks of life going through diagnostics, because there are a lot of undiagnosed adults living out there in the world these days that are coming to our service for support, guidance, and advice to get a diagnostic, to get that answer as to why they found life so difficult for so long, why they're no longer able to manage, and we can work with them on a one-to-one basis to, I suppose, build their self-esteem, come to terms with their new identity, and really get that support from people like us who genuinely understand what they've been through. So yes, we do that. And then as far as employers as well, we do corporate training days. We have linked in with a lot of employers. We are also affiliated with Access to Work as well. Darcy, I hope that answers your question. Everything is on the site as well. All the information is on the website. So I'm going to look through Okay, another question. My question is, what tangible change will a diagnosis provide? Very good question. My daughter's already in the school SEND register and has an EHAP, which will the school be forced to actually provide for educational needs? Now, there's a lot of questions in there. I don't know which one to answer first, so I'll try and answer them in order as much as I can. So, Kat, what tangible change will a diagnosis provide? So, first of all, the tangible change will be your daughter has an EHCP that the school are not legally bound to implement. So, they're doing that out of the kindness of their heart. And this is a situation that happens a lot. Okay, so we have a lot of kids that we're working with one-to-one at the moment, and they will come through us initially and say, our child had an EHCP or a statement of educational needs. The Senko last year was lovely. The Senko has sadly went on maternity leave or has retired, and we've got a new Senko who doesn't have the same attitude and is saying because they don't have a diagnosis, we're not implementing this. Where a diagnostic assessment report will always mean that everything on the HCP will be honoured, will be delivered, will be reviewed on an each term basis or shorter depending on the case. So even for workplace accommodations, it can be unlawful dismissal, unfair dismissal, even for university places as well, and stuff like that. So yes, that's I suppose, a short answer to the first question. Um, I answered the second question inside the first. Will the school be forced to actually provide for educational needs? They will be duty bound and legally bound to do so. Yes, because I suppose it's difficult without a consultation, but is it actually an EHCP that's been approved by the local authority or just something the school have put in themselves at a discretionary measure? Because there's a big difference in the two. It's difficult to know without a consultation. So will CAMS be forced to help with my daughter's physically abusive behaviour? No. Now, what I will say to that is that physically abusive behaviour you do not have to tolerate. We say this a lot in our whether it's behaviour seminars or everything else. A diagnosis of autism or ADHD is not an excuse for violent or abusive behaviour in any way. And what needs to be done there will be consequences and boundaries. Now, this is what a lot of people read incorrectly. People will read things like autistic kids with PDA profile can't have consequences or boundaries because it makes them worse. It's just not true. It's not true at all. Where we would work with a lot of parents to help them to build the confidence and the courage to get those boundaries down consistently over time to reduce physically abusive behavior or verbal abuse, because that will get worse now, and that's what we would mainly offer through our one-to-one support. I hope that answers your question, Kat. Okay, Lisa, my question is, if my son does go through the process and get a dual diagnosis, which the Senko thinks he will he be able to get the one-to-one support he requires to excel? Yes. School said that the education board won't help with a private diagnosis. What they mean by that is that they will not provide the private diagnostic on a subcontracted basis. They have to, though. The school said that to you. I'm sorry to tell you, Lisa, the school misinformed you. It's a common misconception. If, for example, you are in Northern Ireland, I'm just going to use that as an example because that's where I am. With my son's dual diagnostic assessment of autism and ADHD, which was accepted and ratified, is if they had a setback, we are not accepting this because it was done privately, then legal action could happen and we would certainly win. It's a slam dunk. So, yes, they will have to help because it's fully compliant using the same processes and often mechanisms that they do. So, all of our partner clinics are follow all the guidelines, the same as what they do. The school have misinformed you there, Lisa. I'm sorry to say, but they have. Because with us, if no school or no local authority or education board accepted our partner clinics diagnostic assessments, then I wouldn't be here reassuring you that they do. A lot of people are misinformed, and sadly, some of those have the title of teacher or GP. And I don't blame them for having the misconception. It's just probably what they've been told or what they've habitually learned over years. It's just unfortunately that it is incorrect. Okay, so that was all the questions that I've got. Is there any more questions? We have a few minutes left. So put a quick question in the Q&A. What I'll do once again is I will put the link if you want to book a complimentary 15-minute consultation with us to discuss your needs. Now, what I would always recommend is just go private for everything. Don't take it back to CAMS, just stay on the private train because you'll not have to fight with them to accept it or anything else. Because just pretending they don't exist is often easier. That's since I did that personally for my own son, his life has got infinitely better because they're not going to get funded anytime soon. My question is, my eldest son masks a lot. Will the diagnosis still be able to happen? Yes, because as a parent, you will be the sole informant. Um, I mean, if an adult is over 18 and they say that they mask, what we always do in the consultation or in the early stages of the diagnostic is say, if masking is a feature with you, please answer the questions because what it'll be is us answering the questions dishonestly. However, you will be the sole informant and expert clinics that we have are very good at spotting this anyway. And there's other information from other areas like school or health visitors or other mental health professionals that may be involved through your son's life. I hope that answers your question. Okay. So my question is, on your website says RTN Medical can only prescribe medication to adults. Recommend another company that can prescribe to children. Yes, we can. Book a consultation with us. We can certainly talk about it. But then again, it would depend. We do have other providers for those that do want to go through the medication titration period with their children. So certainly talk to us. And look, that does bring us to time. All I can say is thank you so much for joining us. I really hope you found that informative and insightful, and it answers your questions, and most importantly, gives you that reassurance. Because the thing is that if you just go private for everything, you will have much less stress. You'll not be fighting with people. You'll not be battling with people. You will not be constantly on your guard all the time. Darcy Isaacs has said, are you in LinkedIn? Darcy, yes, I am. Due tomorrow. Just JUDEMOROW. Type me in. I'm there. But look, thank you so much, everyone. I really, really hope that was helpful to you. And look, we are here to help. We're happy to support. We've got availability for all of our services at the minute. You are in the right place, and it is, most importantly, safe. So once again, thank you so much for joining me. I really hope you got some value out of that. Have a lovely evening, and I'll see you all soon.